They walked into that meeting room like they owned it. Cold Reckoning presents. They stole her work and presented it as their own. She sat in the back and waited. They had her slides, her data, her analysis, her 18 months of work, formatted in her font, built on her framework, carrying her fingerprints on every single page. And they were presenting it as theirs. Confidently, smoothly, without a single moment of hesitation. She sat in the back row, said nothing, opened her notebook, and waited. Because she knew something they didn't. She knew what question was coming, and she knew they couldn't answer it. Her name was Nadia Chen, senior analyst at a consulting firm that moved fast, rewarded visibility, and punished people who worked quietly. She had always worked quietly. That had always been her mistake, until she decided to make it her weapon. The project had started 18 months earlier. A market entry analysis for one of the firm's largest clients. Complex, multi-layered, the kind of work that takes real thinking. Nadia had been assigned as lead analyst. Two senior consultants, Ryan and Brett, had been assigned as client liaisons. The arrangement seemed reasonable on paper. Nadia would do the analysis. Ryan and Brett would handle the client relationship. What it meant in practice. Nadia worked. Ryan and Brett attended the meetings and explained what Nadia had built. At first, she told herself it was just how the industry worked. Senior people present, analysts execute. Everyone knows their role. But then she started noticing things. Ryan using, Brett responding to client questions about methodology, with answers that were verbatim from her internal memos, without attribution. The final report, 94 pages, 18 months of her life. Submitted to the client with Ryan and Brett listed as authors, her name not present. She found out on a Wednesday. She was not on the distribution list for her own report. A junior colleague forwarded it to her by accident. Thinking she had already seen it, she had not. She read her own work with her name removed from it, and she sat very still for a long time. Subscribe to Cold Reckoning right now. Because what she did next required the kind of patience that most people cannot hold. Stay with this. She did not send an angry email. She did not go to HR. She did not confront Ryan or Brett. She did one thing. She opened her calendar and found the client presentation, scheduled for 3 weeks out. The meeting where Ryan and Brett would present her findings directly to the client's executive team, including their chief strategy officer. She sent one email to the partner overseeing the project. It said, the partner said yes without a second thought. Analysts observing client presentations was encouraged. Good for development. She was not attending to observe. She was attending because she had spent 18 months building something so deeply layered that there was only one person in that room who could answer every question about it. And that person was going to be sitting in the back row in silence until the right moment arrived. She spent the 3 weeks before the presentation doing one specific thing. She identified every question the chief strategy officer was likely to ask. Not general questions, specific ones. Based on publicly available statements the CSO had made, his known priorities, his documented concerns about market entry timing, there was one question she was almost certain he would ask. A question about a secondary data set she had included in Appendix 7. A set so granular that Ryan and Brett had never once discussed it with her. They didn't know it existed. They had put it in the deck because it looked impressive. They had no idea what it meant. She knew exactly what it meant. She had built it from scratch over 6 weeks. She could explain every number in it from memory. She wrote the question down in her notebook the night before the presentation, underlined it, and went to sleep. The meeting was at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Ryan and Brett arrived early, confident, polished, the kind of energy that comes from people who have never once doubted their own right to be in a room. Nadia arrived and sat in the back row. She opened her notebook to the question she had underlined the night before. She did not look nervous. She had nothing to be nervous about. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever watched someone take credit for your work? Tell us what happened. We read every single one. Ryan opened. Brett handled the methodology slides. They were smooth, practiced. The client team was engaged. The CSO was nodding. 40 minutes in, the presentation reached the market timing section. Brett explained the recommendation with the confidence of someone who genuinely understands what they're saying. He did not genuinely understand what he was saying. He had memorized the conclusion without learning the reasoning. He asked a question, not a general question, not a clarifying question, the specific question Nadia had written down the night before, underlined. He began a sentence, then stopped. He looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at the slide, then at Brett. 3 seconds of silence. In a boardroom, 3 seconds is a very long time. He was not impatient. He was simply waiting for the answer to a reasonable question about work that had been presented to him as theirs. Brett attempted an answer. It was wrong. Not slightly wrong, categorically, structurally wrong, in a way that revealed he had never engaged with the underlying data. The CSO's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. And from the back of the room, a quiet voice said, every head turned, including Ryan's, including Brett's. Nadia was already standing. Notebook open. Not to notes. She didn't need notes. She walked the CSO through Appendix 7 in 4 minutes. Every data point, every assumption, every implication for the timing recommendation. She answered 2 follow-up questions before he finished asking them. She cited the 6-week modeling process that had produced the secondary dataset, the one she had built alone, at night, over 6 weeks, that Ryan and Brett had placed in the deck because it looked impressive. The CSO looked at her for a moment. Then he said, she told him her name, her title, her role on the project. The role that had not appeared anywhere on the report. The role that had not been acknowledged in any client communication. He said, not Ryan, not Brett. Subscribe to Cold Reckoning and share this with someone. Who has ever watched someone else take a bow for something they built? Ryan and Brett said nothing in that moment. There was nothing to say that wouldn't make it worse. The partner overseeing the project emailed Nadia that afternoon. He asked to meet the following morning. That meeting lasted 40 minutes. By the end of it, Nadia had been formally credited as lead analyst on the project. A correction was issued to the client with her name included. An internal review of the project record was initiated. Ryan received a formal notation in his performance file. Brett was removed from the implementation team. The client's CSO requested Nadia specifically for 3 subsequent projects over the following 18 months. She was promoted twice in 14 months. Not because she had fought, not because she had complained, because she had sat in the back of a room and waited for one question. She told a colleague afterward, the junior one who had forwarded the report by accident, that the hardest part of the whole thing wasn't the waiting. It wasn't watching them present her work. It wasn't the 18 months of invisibility. It was the 3 seconds of silence after Brett's wrong answer. When she had to sit still and let the silence do its job before she spoke. She had spent 18 months building something. She had spent 3 weeks setting a single trap. And she had spent 3 seconds letting the trap close. The work always tells the truth eventually. The only question is whether you're patient enough to let it speak. That is Cold Reckoning. Subscribe. Share this with someone whose name should be on something it isn't. New story tomorrow. They took her slides, her data, her 18 months. They walked in confident, smiling, certain, and she sat in the back row and waited. One question, 3 seconds of silence.